Hey guys, how you doing? This is Joe from the Home Studio Guru, and we're starting this session with a very special subject. It's the mid-side mono, stereo, and compatibility, and why it is so important to mix in mono or to hear your samples in mono right before you start producing a song, or when you're mixing. The first thing you have to do is to listen to every sample in mono to see if it's compatible in mono and in stereo. This is what we're going to be talking about, so let's start. Alright, in this project, I opened this screen. By the way, I'm using Studio One. This applied on every DAW, digital audio workstation, so you don't have to get stuck with what I'm doing here. But the only thing I do usually, I use something like meter. In this case, I'm using span in here. It's from Voxengo. It's a free meter, and it's amazing because it shows you the phase between mid and side, and the correlation. It has a correlation meter, and it has also a meter. I'll give you an example how it works. So everything in this green, which is the mid, this is the mid. Everything in yellow is the side, and everything in pink is the phase between yellow and mid and side. As you can see here, you see this phase issue. This is the phase happening from the mid and side, and it shows you on which frequencies. You can use also like a normal correlation meter like this one, as you can see, but it doesn't show you which frequency you're having problem with. So instead of fixing the whole frequency, we'll go and fix the whole mid-side thingy. And that's why I like span, but you can use any of them as long you know that you're having phase. Or the third thing we can use is the mono button. In every DAW, you have a mono button. Was it in your hardware or in the software? I usually prefer the master bus. In other DAWs, it's called 2-bus, and in others called mix bus. In Studio One, it's called main. So in this one, all I have to do is press mono, and I see the difference in level between stereo and mono. Let's see. So what I'm going to do here, right before, I need to make you understand why I'm using the listen bus. The listen bus is the last bus right coming out of the master bus, 2-bus or mix bus in other softwares. So let's call it here a mix bus so everybody will understand. This is usually the final one. And in Studio One, we have this option called Enable Listen Bus. So without it, usually this is the last. So whatever you have on tracks here, it will go to the master bus or the mix bus. And when you enable a listen bus, what this does, it takes it out from that to the listening bus, and whatever comes to the speaker out of your audio interface or to your headphone comes from the listening bus. But whenever you export the music, the listen bus get cancelled. So all what you get is the mix bus. So why this is so good? Because whatever you throw at the listen bus won't be exported at the end, so you can just hear through it, but it will never be exported. Like let's say you have a sound ID, for instance. I usually drop a sound ID here. What sound ID does, it change. I have my room. Let's say you're listening through a Sennheiser or whatever you're listening to. This is, for instance, my speakers here in the room, and if you put that on the mix bus and you export it, usually either you need to shut it off or you have to enable to notify me when I'm rendering, so you can shut it off and you don't forget, and you render the whole room with it, room correction with it. But what listening bus does, the moment you export, this will disappear, like it doesn't exist. So it will export only what's happening in here, and that's why I'm using it. Anyway, let's go back to our topic. So let's listen again to this loop and put the span on here. Now this is phasing. How are we going to be dealing with phase? Like when you're picking your samples, the best thing to do is not to pick something that is already phasing. But if you really like the sample so much, you can fix that problem. In Studio One, usually we have this thing called binaural here. And I can reduce to mono or increase the image. It's like basically an image plugin. Or you can pick any plugin you like stereo. I have like millions of them here. Anything that reduce the image. Like for instance, center stereo from Waves can do that. You can control how much sides and how much center. You have in Studio One itself, a lot of plugins can do that. Like for instance, this has happened only in Studio 1.6, but in Studio 1.5, we didn't have this option. So I had to go to a plugin called Binaural Pan, and I had to set the width low. So every time I had to install this. But if you on Studio One, you can simply double click on this, and you have balance, dual, and binaural. So you can directly control it from here. So let's say you have a plugin, or you don't have plugin in my case. All I have to do is just control the width from here. So I'm gonna play the music, and I'm gonna reduce the image. Notice the more I reduce the image, there are no phase anymore between mid and side. So now when I listen in mono, notice there is no huge difference in volume. Now, what I'm focusing on when what I'm listening to is the levels. Listen to all the elements in that loop, and is the level changing when I'm pressing the mono button? So what I mean, let's say I mix the song and I put the level of this loop at -6 dB, for instance, -6 dB, and I hear it very well in the mix, and I'm so happy about it. And then I exported the mix, and then I came listen to it in Alexa or some Bluetooth speaker like this that has only one speaker. It's a mono speaker. Or let's say I go to listen to it in the club. This loop will go really down, about 3-4 dB, if you leave it as it is now without fixing the mid-side levels. Because in the club, it's always it's multi-channel or mono, because you cannot put speaker in one side of the club and the other speaker at the other side of the club, and then just put them in stereo. So if you're sitting under that speaker, you will be hearing half of the sound if it's just stereo, because stereo usually you sit in the middle between them and you hear right and left, the difference between right and left. But in a club, from one speaker, you need to hear everything, because the distance between two speakers is massive. So you wouldn't hear the full frequency, the full spectrum of the song, or whatever you put on the right versus the left, and all these things. So it's mono. In a public system like PA, in a mall or whatever, it's all mono. So what will happen to this sound? This is what will happen. Listen to that. If I didn't fix this problem. Now notice the mid here, and this is the side, okay? The left is the mid, as you can see on the span, and the right is the side. The energy of them is so close, is equal. So imagine when you go to mono, what will happen? All this energy on the right, it's just gone out of the mix. So you destroyed the level. So let's say the level was perfect on -6 dB. Now when you put in mono, poof, you have only the mid in the mono. What will happen? The level will go really down in your mix, about 3 to 4 dB. Depends on what you're using. And this is a big problem, because you thought the mix was really perfect in the studio, on the headphone, everywhere is perfect. But the moment you put it on a mono, it's just half of the frequency disappears. I'll show you in another example. Let's listen to this, for instance. See, for instance, this, it's right, left. See the side, how low it is? See, the moment I press mid, mono, you don't feel any difference. That's a perfect sample that you could use in your mix without any problem. Now notice this one, the energy is so close, right? Look, half of the sound almost disappeared. So all what you have to do is just reduce the imaging, because also don't forget, usually at the end you see everybody. I had a lot of producers, they're sending me their songs to mix and master, and one of the biggest problem I face is this phase issue. They're so happy with the mix, but they never thought about the mid-side levels, and that's why people mix in mono. So I don't think mixing in mono alone solve the problem, because if you do that also, you will have, and you have a lot of songs that fits in stereo. Actually, in a way it works, but still you have the side image, because the moment you put the side, you don't know how much level it will go up on the side, and then your sound in that certain mix, it will increase, which is the opposite of what I'm doing now. So it's better to always listen in mono and in stereo all the time to hear what's getting disappeared from the mix. Here's another one. Notice this area here. Now, if I press in mono, this area will disappear or will get reduced. This is where the phase is. So you have one of two. Either, let's say we want to fix this problem. Okay. Now, in this way, because it's only per frequency, if you check span, like all the others are okay. First, I press on mono. I'm losing a little bit of reverb and whatever, but this area I'm definitely losing. So I want to fix it before I start mixing, and I always do that before you start mixing. Pick any EQ that has a mid side. In this case, I'm using Pro Q2. And set it on mid side. Now check, I'm gonna lock it so we can have both span and the Pro Q2 together. So I'm gonna play, I'm gonna check the frequency I'm dealing with here. It's between 166 all the way till 260. So I'm gonna go here and I pick the side. So we said what? 250 all the way to 166. So I'm gonna go this area. Only this side, I'm gonna reduce it. I'm gonna try to reduce it as much as possible. So now I'm fixing a problem per frequency and not per spectrum. The first way, when I fix it per spectrum. So the whole side will go per level. So the level of the whole side will go down comparing to the mid, which is by this button. So you reduce it here. So notice here, now, if I reduce this, the more I reduce it, look at this side, how it's disappearing from the song. Till I reach a mono and totally disappeared. Now I'm bringing it back slowly, but this problem alone is got fixed already. So you can do both. You fix one problem or you fix both. It's up to you how you do it. The main thing, when you press mono, there shouldn't be changing a lot of changes in volume and in energy. That's perfect. So this is how you solve the problem. And I always ask producer, when you pick your samples, I always ask producer that I work with, always check every sound you pick. Any sound that has phase in it, it's good to be a background sound, but you don't want it to be the main sound. I always prefer a sound that was mono. Look at that, this is all phasing, look at the phase. So this is in mono, look what will happen to it. The energy is gone totally. You hear it has two piano, the highs and the mid piano. The mids disappear totally in mono. So imagine you put this in your song and you're dealing with this problem. This is how you deal with it. If you want the sample, no matter what, you love it, just fix it first before you start producing. Give it a say. If the mid side are so close or the side even higher, reduce the side all the way about 10 dB between this. So the moment you press mono, you don't see any shift in energy. The same sound you're listening to now in stereo, this is what you have to be listening in mono. And if you find that when you do that, you're missing some highs, for instance, on the side, you can fix it all in the EQ. For instance, in this sound that I'm listening to here, let's say when I press mono, I'm missing some highs from the side. I can bring it back. All I have to do, get a side, high shelf, increase it a little bit, so you don't miss much. And see, notice the whole sound is already there. So now, if I shut off this and I shut off this, so let's go back. In stereo, nothing changed, but in mono, let's see what will change. I'm gonna shut off this and I'm gonna shut off this. Back to stereo. Notice how much energy comes up, huge energy in volume. In mono, the volume goes down about 3 dB. So I believe this is how you fix it, and this is my way of fixing it. There are different kind. Every person do it in their own way. Some people do it like at the master side, and I don't like that. I like to do it right per track. And before I start mixing, before even I do a rough mix, I always take track by track and I try to level them in a way. When I go in stereo or in mono, I'm still hearing the same level of music, the same energy, all the difference that change, that the sound open and the image is growing. And to tell you what is phase exactly, look at my hand. This is, I am the mid, okay? And what is phase? Look at that, look at that, look at that, look at that. You see my hand, how it is disappearing? That's the mid, and everything going out of the picture is the side. And that's what side for mono. Me without hands. So you have to keep the sound in this area. So whenever you set up anything in mono, or you hear any music in mono, everything will be in this square, or what we call it the mid, right? So you don't want to do this mistake and keep everything out there. Oh, it's so nice in image and whatever. And the moment someone listen in Alexa or anything, everything is gone. Like you're seeing a man without hands. And he's like doing stuff at the side, but you can't see it. I hope this helped you guys. This is Joe from the Home Studio Guru, and there'll be more of this coming up your way. If you like what I did in here, please subscribe and like. More videos coming of this. Cheers!